Welcome everyone to another CTC Software webinar. My name is Sean Zerbis, the Director of BIM Development here at CTC Software, and today I'm excited to talk with you about some things in Spreadsheet Link out of our BIM project suite. We're going to cover some kind of frequently asked questions about advanced saved settings. And the whole goal here is to unlock a ton of power with Spreadsheet Link so that you can actually work with this tool and use it beyond just basic data entry. Now, as always, these webinars are recorded, so you can always come back to this in the future if you want to see this exact content again. It's going to be uploaded to our YouTube channel. We do encourage you to subscribe to the YouTube channel and be notified like whenever all the new uploads from our webinars go live. Also, as always, for those of you who are participating with us live during this presentation, we keep a good eye on that questions window, and we encourage you to ask questions throughout the course of today's discussion so that, while something is on your mind, you can get it answered immediately about the tool that we're talking about. We also save a huge QA session for the end, so if there's something that doesn't fit well within the general flow, I'll be answering it at the very end after the closing thank you. All right. So let's take a look at today's topic in depth. Spreadsheet Link really is a powerful automation tool. In fact, it's like my Swiss Army knife tool. But you really got to know some extra advanced controls to really take advantage of the full power of Spreadsheet Link. It's really powerful, but you got to dig a little bit deeper sometimes. Now, sometimes you might need to leverage things like macro-enabled spreadsheets or workbooks. You may begin from a worksheet or a workbook that already has some pre-existing outside of Revit context information. And in this webinar, I want to show you how you can leverage that. We're going to start from the simple. We're going to build ourselves up to a bit more complex. Now, I'm going to be showing a ton of Excel formulas in today's discussion in the webinar. I don't expect that everybody's going to know all of the Excel functions I'm going to be talking about, and that's okay. I have a future webinar in exactly 1 week where I'll be presenting a lot in depth about the most popular Excel functions that I use for some of these workflows. And I'll be going through each and every one of them, breaking them down to help you understand a bit more about them. So today we're talking about advanced settings. And then in the next webinar, it's kind of like a two-part series. We're going to be talking about the actual functions and formulas that I leverage in Excel to drive some of these things. Today, I'm going to be talking more about them. So we're going to go over a few things. I want to take a look at the exact essential advanced save options. Now, for this to make a lot of sense, I'm expecting you have a core knowledge, a little bit at least, of how Spreadsheet Link works in the first place, because we're going to be digging a little deeper today. Now, we are going to talk about a sort of Revit-only, and I'm air quoting that despite you not being able to see it, a Revit-only advanced save that has some formulas. I'm going to start with very simple, truly Revit-only, and then a simple Revit-only workflow that uses and piggybacks on some Excel stuff that already exists. But when I'm talking Revit-only, what I mean is an end user only has to use Revit. We're then going to go take a look at a spreadsheet workflow that does require a bit more advanced work that takes into account additional sheets and takes us out into Excel, where we have to use Excel to interact with this particular workflow, and I'll explain why that might be. And then we're going to be taking a look at sort of a fully automated Spreadsheet Link Express workflow, and this is one where an end user doesn't have to see the UI of Spreadsheet Link really at all. All they have to do is say, run some settings and go. And in fact, one of the earlier examples, we're going to use it in that fully automated Spreadsheet Link Express workflow and take a look at how that can work. First things first, I want to outline some of the essentials that are required for this to work inside of Revit and Spreadsheet Link. So we're going to jump over into Revit, and we're going to take a look at the user interface for this advanced save. How do you get access to it? We're going to kind of cover a little bit of the core essentials real quick here. So from the CTC Productivity tab, if you have the BIM project suite installed, the tool that we're looking at right now is Spreadsheet Link, and later on we'll be delving into the tool Spreadsheet Link Express or SL Express. So Spreadsheet Link first though. This is where we author all of the settings that we're going to be working with here. So In this environment, you can pick whatever categories you want, right? We've done this many a time. I can pick categories, I can pick types of objects, I can pick existing schedules that exist in my projects. This is all stuff that I can do on the fly, on demand. But when I want to start building repeatable workflows, what we talk about a lot of the times is beginning to save some settings. Now, I have to have something here to be able to save some settings. And so just for this example, I'm going to go ahead and pick doors, just the category for now. And it's reading the doors in my project and bringing them into this environment. So when I have something here that's actually meaningful, what I'm going to be able to do now is save settings. And actually, it's not very meaningful because it has no parameters chosen, but that doesn't matter. Most of us start with just the Save to File option here. And this lets me save my settings someplace as a Spreadsheet Link settings file. This is the core of how this is all going to work. You're starting with this. But when we want to go to the next step and get truly advanced, which is the focus of today, instead of just doing save settings to file, we're going to do an advanced save. And this unlocks a ton more options. We can save to a file, or we can save direct to our project, just like Save Settings has Save to File or Save to Project. But now we have the ability to specify a template worksheet. We can pick an external Excel file that we know has some things that we want in it. And maybe I built it up as a part of a workflow generation, but I know it has the things that I need, this Excel file. I can browse to that, I can tell it where it is, and then when a user loads settings in the future, the very first thing Spreadsheet Link is going to do is it's going to grab that external Excel file. We're going to do this a little later on. You can also, when you're running Spreadsheet Link Express specifically, have it automatically overwrite an explicit file, the one that you've opened, which I tend to not do. Or I can create a brand new spreadsheet, have it saved as someplace, potentially having it saved as right next to my project model, wherever that exists on my system or my network or whatever. So these are all options that you have with the advanced save. And this is where you can really begin to unlock some of the power. Now, to leverage this template worksheet, you will have to start digging in a little bit to some Excel functions and Excel formulas. And that's where we're going to take a look at some things today. And in my next webinar next week, I'm going to be digging in and showing you some of these functions in detail and why you care about them and where they're useful. Okay, so today, first off, let's start by putting something interesting together. I'm going to start with a truly Revit-only workflow that uses some functions to do some things, and we're going to just save those basic settings. So I'm not going to use truly the advanced save just yet. We're just going to dig a little bit into advanced. And the example that I want to use for this is doors and walls. I want the two to talk to each other. Let's explain why this is. Well, in Revit, if I jump over here to my code plan, my life safety plan, in Revit, if I have a wall out here, if I edit this wall type, this wall is a fire rated wall. It's an interior fire rated wall rated at 1 hour. All right. That wall, when I place an opening or a door into that wall, that door needs to be rated as well. In fact, I believe for this particular configuration, this door, if it has no glass in it, needs to be rated at 20 minutes. And if it has glass in the door, like a narrow vision or a full vision, then it needs to be rated at 45 minutes. The 3/4 of an hour is what the codes say that I was reading the other day about this. So that's all kinds of important stuff, right? I have to know this, and I have to go door by door by door through my project and look at all my walls and understand what's the fire rated walls, what aren't, make sure my doors have the correct ratings. And in Revit, inherently, natively in Revit, there is no way to do this. Revit itself, stock core vanilla Revit, doesn't know how to take my doors and make them read a property, a specific property from the wall, and do something with that. Can't write a formula for it in Revit. So I have to do something extra. I have to write a dynamo routine, or I have to write some extra code, or in our case today, we're going to leverage Spreadsheet Link, and we're going to make Spreadsheet Link make these doors understand the wall they're in and look up whatever property off the wall that I want and pull the data into my door. I'm going to start very simply with this. We're just going to look at a basic, I'm going to call it basic. It's basic to me. It might be a little more advanced to you, but we're just going to have it look at the wall and directly pull whatever the wall's rating is into the door for now. That's the simple thing. And then I'm going to open up some settings that I've pre-built before. That's going to have a fairly big Excel formula in it that does a bunch of logic to understand if it's an interior or exterior wall, but we're going to get to that in a minute. First of all, let's just take a look at how this works. So when we start getting a little more advanced with Spreadsheet Link, we're going to start by picking the two things that I want to work together, whether that be an external spreadsheet and an object in my project, or whether it be two different objects in my project that relate in some form. So in the case of my workflow here, I'm caring about the doors. It's going to take it a second to read the doors. And then I want to go grab the walls because I want both of those to talk to each other. You may be doing something with air terminals and spaces in the room that they're in. You might be doing something with lighting fixtures. I don't know. It's whatever you want, right? Like you can have this talk to any objects as long as they relate to each other in some form or fashion. In my case, I'm using doors and walls. And the reason why I'm specifically using doors and walls, or any object that can host to any other object, is because every object in Revit, when it's hosted to something else, it stores the element ID of the object to which it is hosted. So I can make the two talk even if Revit doesn't natively make it talk. I also know what room something is in, and so I could grab properties from the room or drive properties into a room based on something, or a space for that matter, because it knows what space it's in as well. So I can do that with multiple objects here. So in this case, I have two categories selected, and that builds me two tabs in my little spreadsheet back here. There's a doors tab and a walls tab. Now, when I'm working with this, with the walls, the properties that I'm normally going to care about is going to be the wall's fire rating. And a fire rating is actually a built-in parameter to walls. So I know that it's always going to be there. I'm going to be using this one. This is a type property from the walls. I can tell because it says type down here. So I'm going to add fire rating to the list. Now, not every single one of my walls has a fire rating. In fact, very few of my walls apparently have fire ratings in them. Let's see if I scroll down far enough. Yeah, a lot of these don't have any fire ratings here. Oh, I grabbed from room. Look at me. That's silly. I should probably grab the correct parameter if I want this to work. Fire rating. Here we go. There's one 3-hour wall, right? So I've got a 3-hour rated wall in my project someplace, and it tells me that's the property of that instance of that wall is looking at the wall's type definition. I also care about the function of the wall, if it's interior versus exterior. So I like to grab that one and bring it across. Those are the only two properties I need because the very first column here is the element ID of my walls. Well, with my doors now, one of the properties that I can leverage, when I just click on doors, it activates the doors tab over here. I want to grab the host, and every object that can be hosted will have the host properties here. Now, host is just, it's just the type of object, if it's a wall or a ceiling or whatever. That's not really what I want. What I want is the host ID. So you might know this, but a door, for example, could be placed into a ceiling as an access panel. That could be considered a door. You might schedule. It's got hinges and a latch, right? It could be hosted into a roof. So there's a lot of things it could be hosted into. All I care about is what is the ID of that host. So these IDs generally in my project are likely going to match up with one of the walls. Now, what I'm going to do is also grab from this a fire rating property. Now, this is a custom property. Doors don't inherently have fire rating. I've taken and added fire rating as an instance property. It's instance, I can tell because it's the mint green one down here. I've added fire rating to a number of my doors. And apparently, I've already saved fire rating into a number of my doors, and I forgot to delete that. So let's clear that out real quick so we have no fire rating here for now. I'm going to do something real quick, just equals, quote, quote, clear it all out, and apply this back to my project. This, by the way, is a fantastic way to strip out properties. I just applied 251 doors a stripping value that removed all the properties. Simple little formula, equals nothing. Equals, quote, quote, means equals nothing. So that now has updated everywhere. Now, what I want to do is I want to find the fire rating, and I'm just going to pull across the value directly from my walls. If the wall says 3-hour, I want my door to say 3-hour. I know that is absolutely wrong. That's okay. The goal here is just to create a relationship and talk about saving that relationship. So we're doing that first. Here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look up the wall's host ID. the walls element ID over here. So this is the element ID of the walls, all the walls in my project, and I'm just going to look that up. And if I find that element ID, I'm going to pull across whatever its fire rating value is. It's as simple as that. So I'm going to write a simple little formula here. Now, when I write this formula, I'm just going to use equals. And the first thing I'm going to start with is a little function in Excel called if error, because if something goes wrong and it errors, which happens a lot with Excel functions and formulas when it can't find something. Say this door happens to be hosted into a roof, and that roof ID isn't listed in my walls list that I'm looking up from. Well, if that happens, then it's going to throw a big, pound error or pound NA or pound value or something like that. It's going to show up like value like this, and I don't want that showing up in my project model. So I'm going to put a little catch statement here. It's if error. And in the if error statement, I'm going to tell it to do something. I'm going to give it some kind of a rule. I'm just going to put X here for now. And if for some reason it can't do that, then what it's going to do is it's going to put nothing. It's going to put quote, quote. So all of my little lookup stuff is going to happen right here. Now, again, I'm going to be explaining these in detail in my next webinar next week, talking about all of these functions in detail. So for now, I'm just going to write this out real quick since I happen to know what it is I want. I'm going to index a value. I'm going to be indexing specifically C4 right here. I'm going to look up where that value exists in a, actually incorrect. I'm going to index a series of values here off of walls, which is the entire C column off of walls. I'm looking that up. From that, I want to, let's just put a closing quote here in a comma. I want to pull a value. I'm going to match something in this list as well. I'm going to be matching from the element ID list. So I want to pull a value from here, and I want to match something. I'm going to match specifically from doors this property to what I've got over here in the walls column to figure out what row I'm on, and I'm going to be a specific exact match, a zero match. And so when I do that, it looks here, and that was very coincidental. It found a 3-hour wall immediately here. It looks in that list of walls, 223267. Let's go find that. I don't know where that is. 22. It's probably up here near the top since it's a 2 something. 223267 right here. So it actually looked in here and found this particular wall instance, and from that wall, it figured out, oh, this door is in a wall that has a 3-hour rating, and it pulled that value across. So that's what my little formula does. Now, what it's going to do, if I pull this down, it's going to start looking at every single one of these, and it goes, okay, look up on the walls tab, find this value, and you find the value, return me whatever the fire rating is for that. Now, I could drag this down manually. That's kind of silly to do, though, because I really want this to automatically apply to however many doors I have in my project all the time, 100% of the time. So in Spreadsheet Link over here, there's a little ability for you to check this little box in front of fire rating. When you put a formula in something, like on my doors tab, when I put a formula into that very first row, the 4th row, well, first row is up here. 4th row right here is the first row of data specifically. When I put a formula in there, I'm going to automatically calculate that formula or autofill it all the way down. So when I check the box for fire rating here, it took this formula and basically drug it down all the way, and it's now looking up for every single door what its properties are all the way down this list. It'll find me wherever it finds a match for the host ID, it'll find that and fill it out. Some of these are -1 because some of these doors aren't hosted. They're just placed in the model in some view, probably for legend purposes or whatever, so they don't have a host. And this, again, is where the if error statement comes into play. It just puts nothing if it can't find that particular host. It puts nothing, and if it can find the host, and if that host has a value, it returns it. So now if I really wanted to, I could apply this worksheet back to my project, and all of my doors would have that value, that text string. Now that's an inaccurate value. What I really want is a formula that looks something more like this right here. I'm going to do that whole if error thing, but I want to look at the walls, and if it's nothing, don't put anything there. And then if the walls happen to be interior, then I want to do some extra check to see if it's a glass door, if the door has glass in the door type. And then what I want to do is do some extra stuff. So if it's got glass, it's a 45-minute door. If it's in a wall that has 1 hour, if the wall is a 2-hour wall, make it 90 minutes, right? It's going to go through some of this logic here and build this up for me. So I built a fairly complex if statement with some fairly complex indexes and match statements and, pulling values out, right? I'm not going over this entire formula here. That's not the purpose of today. We will dig into this a bit more in the next webinar here, but the goal here is that you could do extra stuff, right? So I would put that formula that I just had on screen up here, and it would do all the work for me. Every time I wanted to do this, I could put that in there. But of course, I do not want my end users having to know how to write this out, right? That's too complicated for daily Revit users. It's too complicated for me every time I want to do this. I don't want to have to know that formula over and over again. That's frustrating. I want this to be quick and efficient. And so what am I going to do? Oh, I'm going to save these settings once I've got this all figured out so that Spreadsheet Link knows to pull doors and pull walls. It knows for doors to pull specific properties. It knows for walls to pull different properties. And it knows what that formula is that I want to be using right here. So because it knows all of that, I don't have to remember any of this stuff. I can simply load my settings. So I'm going to save this to a file externally. I'm going to put this someplace centrally. Where do I want to go here? C drive, there we go. I've got a little demo folder set up here for all my pre-saved settings for all my tools, and Spreadsheet Link is one of those. Fire rating is one of my little saved settings here. I'm going to call this out as door fire rating from walls. Looks like I already called one with that name. Look at that right there, door fire rating from walls. We'll just overwrite this guy. This was saved a very long time ago. Okay, so I can replace that. Now, let's see what that does if I load that one back up. I'm just going to close out a Spreadsheet Link here, shut it down, open up Spreadsheet Link. Wrong tool, that was Schedule Excel. Open up Spreadsheet Link. There we go. Load settings from a file, and I'm going to say door fire rating from walls. This is the one that I just saved just now. Open this up. It's going to take it a second because it's going to have to scan all my doors, scan all my walls, get their properties, pull them into the list, write the formula and populate it. But once it does that, once it populates that formula, all of my doors inside of here are going to automatically populate with the properties from the walls. It really takes, what, 10, 15 seconds here for these to all fully load and populate, and then I can simply apply the active worksheet back, and I don't have to know all of the individual formulas and functions that I really want this to use. So this is sort of advanced Spreadsheet Link basics, okay? That's just the essential stuff. So what we're looking at sort of here is within Revit, if I hit apply here, apply all active worksheets, it would, or from just doors here, apply the active worksheet, it would push these values back into my doors. And so what we're looking at here is sort of a Revit-only advanced save. And it's actually not really even an advanced save, it's just a Revit-only save, okay? Let's take a look at another sort of save workflow with Revit here. Pull Revit back to the foreground and take a look at this. Another workflow that I might want to do is I might want to calculate out my room occupancies or my space occupancy. Revit doesn't automatically calculate that for me, right? If I go here into Revit and I click on a room or a space is a system object. A wall is a system family object. I can't write my own formulas element by element on those objects. It's just not possible, sadly. So if I have an object here and I know what the square footage is, in this case, I've got, or the area is, in my case, in an imperial model, it's in square feet. I have 331 square feet. I've built in to my project a schedule key. It's called occupancy category. And as I change this occupancy category to different things from the IBC list, if I said this was a dormitory, what that does is it changes the square footage required per person for this space. So this isn't a dormitory. This is actually a business area. And so it's a 100 square foot requirement per person that's going to be in this space. My area here is 331 square feet. So if I take 331 and divide it by the 100, that should be 3.31, which rounded to the nearest whole person is 3. So three people. So I'm going to come down here to my occupancy, and I'm going to put in either 3.31 manually, which can show up in my room tag, or if I want it to be a whole number, just 3, because normally I would just have whole numbers of people and spaces. And with this now, I have just entered this value. But again, I do not want to have to go through room by room and run that calculation so that my occupancy is accurate, so that I could do other stuff like figuring out, okay, on level 1, my total occupancy is such and such, and then I can do some math to figure out how many water closets and labs and drinking fountains I need for the men's room, women's room, and the common space out here, right? Because that's the whole reason I'm doing occupancy, is to figure those types of things out, figure out, how many people are going to be going to the nearest emergency exit, right? That's another thing that I might be doing with occupancy, but I got to run the numbers on this first, and that takes time. That can take a lot of time to reevaluate that. If I resize a room, redesign some things in the floor plan, I have to rerun those numbers before I can output my code compliancy sheets. Well, that's all well and good, but I want to do that much more automatically. And you know what? For that matter, since these calculations over here for the plumbing calculations are also a known set of values, I know that for X number of people on the floor, I need X number of water closets for the men's room and X number of water closets for the women's room, X number of urinals for the men's room, X number of labs for both, right? I know these things. So I want to make sure that I can run those calcs as automatically as possible without me needing to manually input numbers in an external Excel spreadsheet. And this is where we start to leverage the real power of Spreadsheet Link, okay? I've already pre-built, if I jump back over here to my spreadsheet stuff, I've already pre-built for myself in my room calculations a plumbing fixture loads calculation here, where I have a water closet calculation in my building for specific levels. And if I was to put in a specific occupancy here, like 20, whatever I do there, then it's going to automatically figure out for me based on this particular ratio of 1 water closet for every 5 people or 500 people. It's going to say, well, there's an equal number of men and women on the floor, and it rounds up to the nearest whole person or nearest whole 500 people to give me 1 water closet. There's another one over here that's a little bit different, right? If I have, say, 200 people in the basement level, then it's going to tell me some different balance there for how many water closets I need for the men's room or the women's room potentially, if my maths were right. Round up B4, divided by 2. I did the maths wrong here. Oh no, that's actually correct. That's 1 water closet for the first 25, or for the first per 25 for the first 50, and then 1 water closet for every person after that. So there's 100 men and 100 women on the floor. That's 3 water closets. That makes perfect sense. The maths are right here, right? So I'm not manually doing these numbers myself. If I type in the number, it figures it out. But here's the deal. If I can automatically figure out how many people I have in the rooms that are all on level 1, then this number could be told to automatically look up something. So I'm actually doing a sum if. I'm looking up how many rooms exist in my building. So if I was to enter all of my rooms in, well, that's great. It's going to fill all this number out and then do some calculation to figure out what level they happen to be on. Now, for this to work as well, I have to understand sort of what the levels are in my building, because that's going to be custom project to project. In some buildings, it might be called ground floor. In some projects, it might be called main floor or level 1 or entry level or whatever you want to call it. And so I may need to custom build these names here so that I can look up the proper level name over here. Well, what I've done is I've actually built into this little spreadsheet here a levels tab that knows what the levels of my building are, and it actually sorts them in the proper order as well. So this can actually pull into my individual sheets over here what the level name is. It's actually looking up from levels what the levels names are. So it pulls and populates that value here. The lowest level shows up first, and then the next level, the next level, the next level. If it's a building story, I've got that all kind of pre-populated. So I have Excel spreadsheet tabs that don't know anything about Revit, looking at data that comes out of Revit over here, like my Rooms tab via Spreadsheet Link. And now when I populate this with information, these tabs know how to do their calculation, and I'm getting really well formatted items here that match what I need as automatically as I possibly can. Now, how does this start? Well, If I jump into Revit, let's take a look at how this starts. If I jump into Revit, the first thing that I want to do is figure out how the maths are going to work. So I'm going to jump into Spreadsheet Link over here. I'm going to go grab all of the rooms in my project, rooms. That's going to give me some stuff for rooms, right? In the rooms, I'm going to care about things like what is the level of the room? What level is this room on? What is the area of my room? What is the area requirement per person for my room? And in my case, that's a custom CTC parameter that I've built. Then I can go in here and grab the occupancy over here, the occupancy CTC, and now I can do some simple maths for all of this. This is no different than what we just covered with doors and walls. I'm simply going to check the box for occupancy. I'm going to go, that is the calculated box for occupancy. So whatever formula I put into the first data row here on row 4 automatically populates down. I'm going to do some simple things like equals equals this value here divided by this value here. Now, it is a little bit different in that these values coming out of Revit are suffixing with their units of measure. And I got to handle that. So I got to write some kind of a very complex trim formula to trim off anything that's the last 3 digits here in this case, if it's SF or SM for square meters or M2 for meters squared. Or I can just do what I like to do here, which is check the hide unit symbol box. And when I do that, it hides that unit symbol, and now I don't have square feet. It does tell me here that it was square feet, but I don't have to worry about trimming that away. And now, once again, I can simply do equals this value divided by this value. And that runs down the maths and figures it out. You might want to get a bit more complex about this and do some things like rounding this down, round down to the nearest whole person. 0 decimal places so I can have whole numbers of people. And if for some reason this is an occupiable space, but it's less than 1 whole person, maybe I make that a 1, or maybe I just change these maths to round up and I over occupy my building potentially. In fact, I should do this up here so it does it for all of them, round up. And then it will rerun my maths. Now, I do have to handle scenarios where a room perhaps is not occupiable or perhaps doesn't have a square footage. So I may have to write some extra logic in here, like if error. So I'll do that right now. If error, do the thing, and if there's a problem, just put nothing in there instead. And so then what it will do is it will just automatically, if it runs into a scenario where it can't do the maths, it will just put nothing, right? Some simple things here, but I can run these numbers and figure out what I want my formula to be. Now that I have this, I'm going to copy this. I'm going to copy this value, or I might save my settings so I could run this simple calc just directly from Spreadsheet Link the next time once I figure out what my logics are. But there's another way that you can do this. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open an already pre-existing spreadsheet. Let's go ahead and do this here. Go to my demo folder here where I've got my settings, Spreadsheet Link, room calculations, and here's my occupancy room calculations sitting out here. I'm going to open this up. And when I open this up, now this one coincidentally happens to already have a rooms tab. It's already here. And that's great. I've already kind of pre-written this workflow, but when I first started, I didn't have a rooms tab. That wasn't there. I only had these water closet, lav, drinking fountain calculations. And what I had done was I added to my Revit or my Spreadsheet Link list here rooms. So I went, go ahead and add rooms for me. Now in this case, because the rooms tab already exists, I'm going to be overwriting it. Yep, overwrite that tab. And then what I'm going to do is add whatever my fields are that I want. So I'm going to say, well, go ahead and add in here the level that I had before. Go ahead and add in here the, what was it, level, area per person, and occupancy. Make that a calculated field and put that little formula that I copied right back in here so it runs my calculations again in the exact same way. D4, oh, I forgot to do hide unit symbol. Silly me. All these things you got to remember, right? Paste this value, here we go. So now it's going to run the maths down and do exactly what we had done before. But now I've got all these cool extra tabs out here. And these extra tabs, I would use Excel's power to write some lookups to look up other stuff out there. Look up from the rooms some data that matches my level name. since I have level as a part of my properties, and then run other simple maths to take this number and divide it out however you feel is appropriate for your spreadsheets. I have seen some electrical engineers leverage this for some of their automatic Excel-based power panel calculations. You can circuit stuff in Revit, maybe don't do your balancing there, but you could then take the data out into Excel and know what all of the individual fixtures are and what panels and logic they're connected to, and then run your own Excel-based panel board calculations, right? There's a lot of things you can do with this because you can have your own tabs in Excel that have nothing to do with Revit that are now looking up Revit-based data that you can format and control in a way that's meaningful for you. Now this, right here, this is where the whole advanced save workflow becomes really powerful, because I can go here to Save Settings, Advanced Save. Once I have that fully built out Excel spreadsheet that has everything that I need, in my advanced save, I'm going to specify that template worksheet, that occupancy plumbing fixture load calculation spreadsheet that I've put together. I'm going to use that, and every single time I load my settings, it is going to very specifically open this first, and then it is going to add my rooms tab in, and it's going to apply the formula and automatically check the unit symbol and put the fields in the right order and do all those things. But now, because I have these other tabs out here from Excel, Excel can know to look up off of a rooms tab that already pre-exists, that's now populated with my project's data and has my calculations. Really powerful when you start to dig in to that level. You only have to set it up once, and once you have this set up, every team member on your team can now load those settings and have it automatically run your calcs. Let me show you one example of this. I'm going to load my settings from a file. I'm going to load the pre-baked settings that I have for these room calculations that I've fairly recently saved, I guess. I'll go ahead and just double click on this. It's going to ask me if I want to overwrite the rooms tab. And because I actually have levels in here as well, it's going to ask me if I want to overwrite the levels tab. So here in rooms, well, let's go to levels. It pulls the actual levels from my building. It knows to do some automatic sorting. That's a part of my save settings. It knows to potentially filter my levels for just those that are building stories. So those that are able to be stood on, those are ones that I want to actually do modeling around. For my rooms out here, it's not doing any filtering or sorting because it's not really needed, but what it is doing is grabbing those fields, and it's using a slightly more complex formula where it's still doing the if error, but it's rounding down to the nearest whole person, unless that number is less than 1, at which point it puts just a 1 into the properties. So I'm getting a slightly better calculation in my opinion. So 430 divided by 1 would be 4. 57 divided by 100 would be 0 normally, but because it's less than 1, it becomes 1. And so I've got my occupancies out here. And now I can apply this active worksheet right back to my project, and it can very quickly update 95 of my rooms in my project with the proper occupancies. That took me just a few seconds with this workflow. So out here, you can see I've got some occupancies populated now in occupiable spaces. But this also, I didn't mean to maximize that, whoops. This also has gone through, and for whichever method of calculation I needed, it's figured out over here that my basement level has 90 people, and my level 1 has 124 people, and level 2 has 1,400 people, according to the numbers that it's calculated here. And based on that, it's figured out how many water closets, labs, drinking fountains, whatever I need. This one here is the water closet calculation based on method 2, and I've got labs over here as well based on different calcs out of the IBC, and drinking fountains, and maybe you've got other ones that you want to calculate as well. So this now is running those numbers for me based on tallying this up, and it took me all of, a second to run those settings, right? So this doesn't require, after I've configured it, it does not in any form or function require me to go out to Excel. After I've built it, my end users simply load the settings from a file like you just saw me do. They pick the settings they're supposed to load, and then once it loads, they apply this property back to their project. And that's it. That's an end user experience. Now, there are some times where you need to go out to Excel. And so we're going to talk about using a spreadsheet as a part of this advanced save, but needing to go out into the Excel interface to help automate part of a workflow. Now, I taught a really in-depth workflow about this not too long ago in an MEP project startup discussion, but I want to show this in a lighter weight here so you can see an example of how this also might work. Okay, I'm going to switch over to a different project model here. This is an MEP starter project model that already has a number of views pre-built. So I've got a number of floor plans out here. All of these floor plans need to get placed onto sheets, or I need sheets for them in some form. But here's the trick, not all of them. It's actually only the main floor plans and the enlarged plans out here, not the enlarged master plan that these dependent views, area A and B, are nested within. I do not need anything that's coming from any of my coordination or design model or model setup or load calculation views, just those that are a part of construction permit, just those that are floor plans or ceiling plans, and only those that don't have any dependent views nested under them. Right, so that's some very specific criteria. And for all of those views, I need a sheet. I need an enlarged area A sheet for basement level. I need an enlarged area B sheet for basement level, and I need an overall floor plan sheet for basement level. I need all those sheets for every single one of these, for lighting, for power, for HVAC, for domestic water, wastewater, all of that. That takes a lot of time to build those sheets, about, 150 some odd sheets for a project of this size with 4 levels and all the disciplines. So instead of me manually building these sheet by sheet, one by one, what I want to do is I want to automate this. If I can figure out what these views are, and I can figure out what my sheet naming convention is based on these views, I can do a fairly significant, fairly easy for an end user automation once I've worked this all out. But it's going to involve me going out to Excel. I have to go to Excel for this. I'm going to show you why. So with Spreadsheet Link, this one I'm not going to dig into too deeply. If you want to know how I put this particular one together, I have a webinar about it. And by the way, I didn't mention this earlier, but all of the settings that I'm talking about today, if you want them, reach out to us. We are more than happy to give you these settings and talk you through how you can use them as well. In this case, I'm going to load some settings from a file, and I've already got my settings saved here for my sheet creation. So when I open this up, what this is going to do is open up a pre-existing Excel workbook. It's going to populate the Levels tab right here. It's going to populate the Views tab in just a moment here. It's taking a second to pull my levels and my views. Here we go. Here's my views. So it's populating my levels and my views tab. Now the views over here very specifically do have some filters on them. They are only pulling in views that are classified as construction permit views. So whatever your view types are in your project, you're going to want to customize for that. It is only looking for views whose family type contains plan, that is floor plan or ceiling plan. It is trying to guarantee that I'm not getting my dynamic legend views, which I use on my cover sheets that already exist in my project. And it's looking for those whose dependency does not equal primary, meaning it's not a host for dependent views. If it's empty or if it's dependent, then I want them in this list. And so now I have pulled inside of here a few properties. I know what Revit discipline these views are associated to. I know what their level happens to be. I know what their view creator abbreviation is. I know this because I used view creator to build all these views, and view creator has an abbreviation associated to that. So I can leverage lighting ceiling plan as a part of my sheet name potentially as well. I can know what area it's associated to in the building, if it's the overall or if it's area A or B or whatever that happens to be, and which is basically the scope box it's associated to. And I can know what the subdiscipline is, because I want to know not just if it's electrical, but if it's lighting or power, if it's HVAC versus mechanical piping, if it's plumbing or fire protection. I want to know those things, so I have that pulled into my list as well. Now, the spreadsheet that I opened already technically had a Levels tab and a Views tab and a Settings tab, and for that matter, even it has a Sheets tab, and it's empty. You might notice over here in my settings, I didn't pull any sheets. I just happen to have a sheets layout here. I did in my configuration build sheets, but then I deleted it all out, and I don't have it a part of my settings because I don't care what my current sheets are. I just wanted to build all the new sheets that I know that I'm going to need. So on my settings tab over here, this doesn't come from Revit at all. All this is a way for me to decide what I want my sheet abbreviation to be for a discipline or subdiscipline. I want to know what the sort order is supposed to be, so when it's in a sheet schedule, it sorts the correct way. I'm using this to drive my sheet's sort order property. I'm using this to drive my sheet numbers letter prefix, and I'm using this over here, my sheet series, for specific subdisciplines to figure out where within each discipline subset it's supposed to fall. So my power sheets are all 100 sheets. My lighting sheets are all 200 sheets. Systems are all 300 based sheets, right? Enlarged plans are all 400, regardless of discipline inside of here. That's how I've got that set up. So you can tune this to whatever it is you need this to be, but this is being used from Excel so that I can automatically build my sheets out. Now, for this to work, my sheets can't automatically run some kind of a macro inside of here that knows how to build themselves out. Spreadsheet Link does not allow you to run macros. But when I save this out as an Excel workbook, if I save it as an XLSM file, which was what my template was here, my sheets template was an XLSM. If I save that out, I'm going to save it here to my little sheets folder. We're going to call this Office Sheets, since this is my MEP Office Sheets here. And I can open this up in Excel. So it's going to take it a second, opens up in Excel. In Excel, my template already had a macro, a VBA macro pre-built. And I show how I built that in another webinar. You can go take a look at that from the MEP Project Startup Sheets Creation webinar. But inside of here, if I go to the Developer tab, I can run the macro called Build Sheets. This knows to look at all of my views, all of my levels, all of my settings, find all the properties it's supposed to find, and assemble for me sheet order, discipline, sheet number, and sheet name from all of those different aspects. This is something that Revit just can't do for me, but this can do in a matter of seconds. Now, this tab also has some conditional formatting pre-baked into the E column so that if I end up with duplicate sheet numbers out here, it's going to highlight that so I can do something to handle it. I have to interact with this so I can make sure I'm doing the right things. Now, in my case, I don't have any demolition, so I can take these demolition plans and just straight up delete them out of the list because they're not necessary. For my lighting plans, I don't have any lighting floor plans. I have all lighting ceiling plans, so I'm going to delete the floor plan series out here. If I wanted to have both, I'd had to have put some kind of logic in to make one floor plan set and one ceiling plan set, so they're not both a 200 series out here, but I didn't write that logic. So I'm simply going to delete the ones that are floor plan based. These are all now green. I'm good to go. Moving down my list, I have some other issues inside of here where my HVAC plans are doing some squirrely things as well, and I need to do something to kind of sort this out. Some of these are HVAC ceiling plans, and that's what I'm going to be getting rid of. In fact, I don't need a roof ceiling plan. That's kind of weird. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of all my ceiling plans for the HVAC and just have the general floor plan orientations for those. Some of these views didn't know what to do because they weren't associated properly to one of my collections, and so I'm just going to delete those because no sheet can be built for those. There's a couple of other demo plans in the list here. I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of those because they're not needed. There was 2 of my level floor piping plans here. I'm just going to clean that up real quick. There's a few more in my list here. DVW piping, I want to keep that one. Where's the other one at? I think it's down at the bottom. Yeah, the underfloor. Oh, the underfloor, right. That's an X sheet. I'm manually going to type that one in. I didn't handle the underfloor stuff here, so I'm just going to manually type that one in. And that will sort that out. I'm going to run through and delete. Oh, that's right. I don't have any demolition plans here, and I didn't do any PD sheets for whatever reason. So it doesn't really know how to do that correctly for some of those. And then finally, I'm not going to actually build any of my fire protection plan sheets just because it's too putsy for me right now in this little demo to go through and clean that up. So I'm just going to delete those. And we're going to have about 133 sheets that this is going to build for me. They're all green. They're all good to go. I can now use this in Revit. The whole point of this is that I had to go to Excel to generate this. This is a not Revit-only workflow, and yet 133 sheets named exactly per my standard and numbered exactly per my standard is exactly what I want. So I don't want to have to do that all by hand. I'm just going to save this and close it. close this one as well. And then back here in Spreadsheet Link, I haven't done any applying of anything yet. I use Spreadsheet Link to get my settings and to save an Excel spreadsheet out. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open that spreadsheet that I just saved and replace everything that's here. In my desktop sheets folder here, this is a macro-enabled workbook, so it's an XLSM, and I have to browse for that. And then I can simply apply this active worksheet back to my project, and this will let me build 133 or 130 some odd sheets. It's going to build them all up. 130, yeah, 130 sheets have all been built, and I'm done with that sheet creation process. Well, almost. If I go down here into my sheets list, you'll notice they don't actually exist in my list yet. And that's because I didn't make them actually build real sheets with real title blocks, since I don't know which title block it is somebody might want. So if I wanted to use like a 30 by 42 sheet here, I could grab all of these sheets that exist in my placeholder list, because that's where all those sheets went, grab all those sheets, match them up with whatever title block is appropriate, and it's going to build me 130 sheets named, numbered, organized in the proper discipline here, ready to go for me. So fire protection sheets here, mechanical sheets here, plumbing sheets here, they're all set. They've all got their right properties. They've all got their right names and numbers. So if I was to go take a look, say, at this sheet right here, this is MP223, level 2 piping floor plan area B. It knows that, and it knows that it's supposed to sort itself in the sheet sort order of 23.1. So my sheet list knows how to filter, sort, and work with these. This is incredibly powerful stuff, y'all, because you can do this so quick now. You can build your sheets, you can do your room occupancies or your space occupancies. You can use Spreadsheet Link and its advanced saved settings to really do some powerful, powerful things when you start to incorporate the power of Excel in the background. Now, again, we're going to dig way more into formulas in a future session, in the next week's session, actually. So I encourage you to sign up for that if you want to know a lot more about this. But we're going to do one more thing here, one final thing, and that is talk about how we can automatically, without the user interacting with this, how we can automatically fill out all kinds of data in the model when it's a fully automatic Revit-centric workflow. I'm going to show one example of this. I'm going to rerun all of my door calculations out here. So right now, let's go take a look at this one down here. In fact, just so we can visualize where this is supposed to be, I'm going to use a completely different tool for just a moment here, and I'm going to apply some graphics to my floor plan here for fire rated walls in my project. I've already pre-configured this so it knows how to do fire ratings. But in this area here, we can see that I have an interior wall. This is an interior type D 5-inch wall, and this is a 1-hour rated fire rated wall. These doors here are full glass doors, FG. That means that these two doors here should probably have a 45-minute fire rating. And right now, if I go take a look at the fire rating, it's nothing. Out here, I have another door that's in a 1-hour wall. This has glass as well, so it should also be a 45-minute rated wall or door. Up here, it's a 2-hour rated door. It needs to have a different rating. I think that's a 90-minute door. And so if I go take a look at the fire rating, right now it's got nothing. It's also a solid panel door. It's a flush panel, so there's no glass in this one. But I want to be able to run through really quickly. These also, I think, are, flush panel doors. So these would be 20-minute doors in this case, in this back area. So I want to make sure that I can run through my project and do all this as quickly as possible. And there's doors on other levels as well that require fire ratings, but I don't want to have to go and do them one by one. Now, I've already written the rules for this. I mentioned that large formula that I put together. That's already pre-baked into my little workflow. So this formula right here, that's got this super deep nested if statement, I worked out the logic one time, and now I want to use that to go ahead and automate the fire ratings of all of my doors. So instead of using Spreadsheet Link, I don't want to answer any questions. I don't want, if there's a sheet that already exists in a workflow, I don't want it to pop up and ask me, do I want to replace it? Because if I give users the option to answer questions, oftentimes they won't make the right choice and my workflow will not work. This is why Dynamo sometimes is a problem, because it takes and leverages actual user interaction in a lot of cases. In the case of Spreadsheet Link Express, all they have to do is load the correct setting. Now, I could have saved this directly to my project and made them not even browse for this. But in my case, I'm going to make them browse. I'm going to make them go figure out where this setting file happens to be. And in this case, my Spreadsheet Link settings for fire rating are sitting right here. This is one that I saved earlier today with my full formula written into it. So I'm simply going to open this up and apply these settings to my project. It's not going to ask me any questions. It's not going to show me any of that spreadsheet user interface so that users could potentially change something. It's just going to run it. It's going to do it. And it's going to, oh, I lost my license. Oops. There we go. It's going to go ahead and grab this information and populate all of my doors with their proper fire ratings directly from the logic in that spreadsheet. It takes it about 10 seconds, 15 seconds on average to do this on a mid to large size project. But once it's done, I mean, that saves me potentially 4 hours, literally, of re-evaluating all of my doors and the fire ratings for those doors across my entire project. This becomes a lot quicker. Even if I ran this once a day and it took it 30 seconds each time, it's still going to be a lot faster than me doing it by hand. And I can pretty well guarantee that all my data is going to be up to date every single time. So I believe that's done. Give me my controls back here, Revit. Revit's thinking about it. We'll see this work in just a second. With that, though, oh, there we go. There's my 10 updated doors and 348 doors left alone. It does give me a confirmation. That's all I needed to know that it was done here was my confirmation. But if I go take a look at this door now, 90-minute door. It's in a 2-hour wall. There's no glazing, 90-minute door. Up here, this door is a 20-minute door. It's a flush panel. It's in an interior 1-hour rated wall, 20-minute door based on the rule set that I've written. Down here, this is in a 1-hour wall, but it has glazing, and so it's showing up as a 45-minute door, right? So automates that process across my entire project. I'm not manually seeking this out. Over here, same thing, 45-minute door. It's in a 1-hour rated wall, 45-minute door. And if I ever change my wall's rating, well, then I can just simply rerun that Spreadsheet Link Express workflow, and across my project, all the doors that are in those walls that follow the right criteria, they're all going to automatically update themselves. All right. This can also run when it needs to save out Excel spreadsheets, like that whole room calculation workflow. I can automate that process as well and have it automatically save my spreadsheet to a known location or right next to my project model or whatever it is you need. So with that, I want to say thank you. We hope you found this information valuable and potentially inspiring and give you some ideas of where you can use Spreadsheet Link in your workflows. We also hope that you join us for the next one in this sort of mini-series where we're going to be talking in depth about some of the really powerful Excel formulas that you can use. Of course, as always, we hope that you found this valuable, and we hope to see you in future CTC webinars.